subway possession. In scenes similar to those in the 1981 film Possession, in which Isabella Adjani becomes possessed in a subway, two friends in San Francisco got the shock of their lives whilst filming in the Mooney subway. As they walk along the platform and approached a yellow dumpster, they heard strange sounds and spotted blood and debris strewn along the platform. Take a look. It's believed the footage was taken in June 2011. The possessed woman had allegedly just split up with her boyfriend, and he had assaulted her in the subway after chasing her down there. He then hit her in the neck with a glass bottle and used the broken glass to cut at her body before pushing her behind the dumpster. The possession supposedly happened after the guy had fled the scene and the two friends turned up with their camera. After the filming stopped, the woman ran away, hit her head on the wall of the elevator and passed out. The boys then called an ambulance. People are putting this down to a demonic possession or a case of mental illness. Either way, it's very sad. We're not sure what it is about subways, but a similar thing happened in 2014 when a video emerged from Canada that appeared to show a woman becoming possessed and launching a crazed attack on a fellow passenger. Take a look. That piece of footage was caught on an Edmonton Transit System train, and later transit police intervened and both individuals were removed from the train and issued violation tickets for fighting in public. The question is, was she possessed by something evil or just angry about something? Both videos have been up for discussion since they emerged, with some believing they are both fake, with the first possibly being a realistic student short film. Others believe that either one or both girls had taken drugs. Possibly the highly addictive and dangerous designer drug Flakka, also referred to as the zombie drug, which causes bizarre behaviour that includes losing inhibitions, gaining superhuman strength, and engaging in violent acts. Then there are those who believe the two girls in the video are possessed by the devil. What do you think is going on in these videos? The Scottish Ghost Fairy. Scotland in the UK is a place steeped in history, myths and legends, perhaps the most famous being the Loch Ness Monster. However, this next clip is not a monster, but an apparition that appears to manifest in broad daylight on the banks of a Scottish river. The clip was filmed by a lady who was videoing the river in the hope of filming some otters that had been seen in the area. Take a look and focus on the left-hand side of the screen. The woman didn't notice the anomaly at the time. It was only when she played back the footage. It's worth pointing out that the apparition could be an elusive Scottish fairy, as for many years Scotland has believed in fairies, originally thought to be evil. Fairies have been part of Scottish folklore for centuries. It is said that if you fall asleep in a fairy circle, especially after sunset, you won't live to tell the tale. Fairies are also thought to be responsible for stealing away babies and leaving a changeling in its place. The most vicious of the fairies are Baoban, Sith or vampire fairies, who devour their male victims and rip out their hearts. So was this mysterious figure something supernatural, or just an optical illusion? Whilst we're talking about Scotland, we thought we'd update you with the latest photographic evidence of the Loch Ness Monster. On the weekend of the 26th of August 2023, the biggest search for Nessie in over 50 years took place, in which hundreds of volunteers took part. The event was well publicised in the UK and inspired Chiao Kelly to go along, with a photograph she took on August 13th, 2018, of an unidentified large eel-like creature spinning on the surface of the legendary loch. Chia managed to capture the image before the creature disappeared and never resurfaced. At the time, she did not want to face public ridicule by making the photograph public, but after showing the image to full-time Nessie hunter Steve Feltham at the event, he was astonished and she decided to share it. Take a look.
The beauty of these latest photographs that Chi Kelly has taken is that they're here in the bay. There's 15 photographs. It lasts 2 minutes, the sequence of pictures, and there's a clear, focused image in the middle of it that I can't instantly explain.
The creature was about 200 meters from the shore, moving right to left at a steady speed. It was spinning and rolling at times, although Chia never saw a head or neck, and she could not accurately assess its length. The two parts that were visible were less than 2 meters long together. Chia was convinced it was a creature, but whether it was the elusive Loch Ness monster is still up for debate. However, Nessie enthusiasts believe it is the most exciting Nessie image to surface in years. What do you make of it? And do you believe in the Loch Ness monster? We took a trip to Loch Ness a few years back, and although we did not see it, we must admit there is a strange atmosphere when standing down by the loch. The Possession of Maurice Theriault. Maurice Theriault was the eldest of 15 children in a French-Canadian family. He had a tough life growing up in rural Maine, where he was abused by his father and taken out of school at an early age to work long hours on the family farm. As an adult, Maurice moved to Warren, where he farmed vegetables that he sold from a stand. He was known locally as Frenchie, but he was a troubled soul. Events from his childhood had severely affected him. He also realized he had superhuman strength and knowledge of things that he had never been taught. Maurice, who was a devout Roman Catholic, started to believe he had been possessed by the devil. By 1982, his symptoms were amplified when his father murdered his mother and then killed himself, and the church believed that the devil had taken over him. On 2 occasions, exorcisms were performed on Maurice, and he also called upon the world's most famous demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren, which resulted in them calling in Worcester Bishop Timothy J. Harrington in 1985 to perform another exorcism. Despite the skeptics, the Warrens always maintained that the possession of Maurice was frighteningly real, describing how Maurice would bleed from his eyes. Here is a terrifying clip from one of his exorcisms. Be warned, this is scary. The Warrens claimed that during the exorcism, Maurice's head split open and boil eruptions manifested on his skin, with crosses appearing all over his body. That same year, Maurice was charged with rape for a second time, but the charge was dropped when he confessed and blamed his demons. In 1990, journalists Michael Lasalandra and Mark Miranda co-wrote with the Warrens and the Theriaults a book called Satan's Harvest, in which they recall the demonic possession that blighted Maurice's life. It's a very creepy book and will be perfect for the spooky season, so we'll include a link to it in the description below. But things did not end well for Maurice. Things took an even darker twist 7 years after meeting the Warrens, when Maurice's supposed demons drove him to almost repeat the crime of his father. He chased his wife into the street, wounded her, then took his own life by shooting himself with a 12-gauge shotgun. Some say that his tormented soul had finally taken over. Those who knew Maurice weren't surprised, as they felt he was either seriously mentally disturbed or was indeed possessed by the devil himself, as Maurice claimed. Michael Lasalandra went on record to say, "I do not think he was a con man. I think he sincerely believed he was possessed." Michael recalled viewing a videotape of Theriault's exorcism and said, "I saw things that were very hard to explain." His sister disagreed, saying she once saw Maurice put blood under his eyelids and cut crosses into his skin with a nail, and that he spoke a version of French and Pig Latin to make people think he was speaking backwards. She claimed her brother was not possessed, he was an actor obsessed with the occult. Theriault apparently had plenty of reasons to feel guilty and depressed. He pleaded guilty to child rape in 1976 and served 5 years probation. In 1985, he was again charged with rape, but the charge was dropped when, like we said, he confessed and blamed his demons. Whatever the reason for Maurice's actions, there is no doubt that he was a disturbed man, and his story and the exorcism footage was featured in the blockbuster horror film The Conjuring. Next up, we have Ghost Girl from the Past. In June 2023, ghost hunters Lindsay and Lee Steer visited Huscar Pit near Silkstone, South Yorkshire, where alleged paranormal activity had been experienced in the past. Whilst live streaming in the area, they initially believed that they had not encountered any spirits, but when they watched the footage back, they spotted a strange anomaly. Take a look and keep an eye on the right-hand side above the bridge in the bushes. Tell us what you see. They were also sent creepy screenshots from viewers who had spotted what looks like a white floating apparition in front of a tree trunk. It appears to be a young girl. The site they were on has a tragic past, and the bricks you can see are an old day-hole shaft that is now a memorial to a tragedy that happened nearly 200 years ago. It all began on the 4th of July 1838, days after Queen Victoria's coronation. 300 foot below ground in a coal pit were around 50 children and 33 coal getters, frantically cutting and moving coal, trying to make up time that they had off for the celebrations. The weather that day was calm and gloriously sunny, but as the day went on, it quickly deteriorated and a vicious thunderstorm set in. As the miners worked away down the pit, the water began to build up above to dangerous levels, and because of the flooding, the miners were instructed to stay together at the bottom of the pit and wait to be rescued. However, some of the children ignored the instruction, and desperate to save themselves, 40 of them started making their way to Huscar Drift to try and reach the day-hole opening that you can see in the photo. But as they climbed out, water burst through, trapping and drowning 26 of them. The children who died were aged between 7 and 17. After their bodies were recovered, they were laid to rest in 7 graves. 11 girls were buried together in 3, and 15 boys in the other 4 graves. Could it be that the apparition in the video is the ghost of one of those children who died under tragic circumstances? What do you think? The Exorcism of Laura. We're finishing up with something so terrifying that we advise you not to think too much about it, otherwise you will not sleep. This footage is a rare and disturbing glimpse into a modern-day exorcism. It was filmed in Argentina in 2015 on a woman named only as Laura. The woman, believed to be 22 at the time, was reportedly a good girl turned evil after she was possessed by the devil. The perceived symptoms of demonic possession included superhuman strength, superhuman knowledge, a different voice speaking through the person, and the inability to control oneself or one's inhibitions. It's unclear which of these symptoms Laura was experiencing, as there is not much information online, but it was believed that she had been freed from the devil by exorcism. Before the exorcism could begin, locals gathered at the church in the capital of Buenos Aires, praying for Laura's soul and redemption. The exorcism was performed by Bishop Manuel Acuna, and in the footage, Laura can be seen withering around on the floor and screaming profanities, before being pinned down by church helpers, as Acuna supposedly drives the evil spirits out of her. The footage is disturbing, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. Take a look. Here is a translation of what the bishop is saying during the process. The demon exists. He's not an idea. He's not a theory. He's not something abstract. The devil is a personality and therefore has a strategy. We are talking about something terrifying, a fallen angel. The devil is not a metaphor. The devil is something real that Jesus Christ faced. The devil looks for the perdition of the human being. and for this, he will use any possible evil instrument. When the exorcism comes to an end, Laura gives a strangled cry, and then suddenly closes her eyes and falls backwards exhausted, wiping away tears as the priest once again makes the sign of the cross over her body. Bishop Acuna can be heard saying, "Thank God, we've recovered a daughter of God." Laura is supposedly finally free. But unfortunately, things do not always go to plan, and an exorcism is not always the answer, and perhaps the most well-documented case of when things go wrong is Annalise and Michael. You've probably heard the story many times before, but we'll give you a brief summary. Annalise was a German woman who underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites. As a teenager, she had a history of mental illness and was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis. However, when psychiatric treatment proved ineffective, and Annalise became physically aggressive, self-harmed, drank her own urine, and ate insects, her family became convinced she was possessed by a demon. In desperation, they appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. At first the request was denied, but eventually in 1975, Bishop Joseph Strangle granted permission for Father Arnold Renz to perform an exorcism according to the ritual Romanium. However, total secrecy was ordered. Renz performed the first session on the 24th of September 1975, and at her request, Annalise's parents stopped consulting doctors and relied solely on the exorcism rites. A total of 67 sessions took place over a period of 10 months, each lasting up to 4 hours. Here's some audio clips of some of the exorcisms carried out on Annalise. Despite the German dialogue, the guttural, demonic voice is disturbing, so listen with caution.
Der Scheißdreck muss gebeten werden, sonst ist aus! Die Priester, die müssen nach ihrem Gewissen handeln. In Bezug auf das Ding? Ja, vor allem wenn... Nein.
Sadly, unlike Laura, Annalise was not freed from her supposed demons and started refusing food. On the 1st of July 1976, Annalise died in her home. Her cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration caused by self-inflicted starvation. She weighed just 30 kilograms or 66 pounds on her death. The aftermath of her horrific death resulted in the state charging priests Ernest Old and Arnold Renz with negligent homicide, along with Annalise's parents. The priests were found guilty and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, reduced to 3 years of probation. However, her parents received no punishment, as it was concluded that they had suffered enough. Several films are based on Annalise's tragic story, including the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, the award-winning 2006 film Requiem, and the 2011 film Annalise, The Exorcist Tapes. Today, Annalise's grave in Killenberg am Main in Germany is a pilgrimage site. The Humpty Dup poltergeist. In August 1997, Jim Somerville and her partner Dave Clark moved into a rental property at 90 McMinns Drive in Humpty Dup, a town located near Darwin, in Australia's Northern Territory. Everything was fine until January 1998, when Andrew and Christy Aggis, along with their nearly 1-year-old daughter Jasmine, started sharing the property with them. Shortly after they moved in, strange things started happening. Random objects would be flung in the air by an unseen force, and terrifyingly, these objects appeared to be aimed at them. Glass bottles and even knives would fly through the air, and both couples felt like they were under attack. On one occasion, gravel and seashells rained down from the ceiling, and the entity tried to communicate by using scrambled tiles to spell out words like fire, skin, help, car, and Troy. The couples believe that this may be a reference to their good friend, Troy Radatz, who had died in a fire caused by a car accident just a few miles from the property. Could it be his untimely death was responsible for the rage? Over the course of a few weeks, the activity ramped up, and scratches could be heard from inside the walls, and appliances were destroyed. Things got so bad, the couple called in a local priest, Father Stephen D'Souza. He too experienced the violence when a knife was hurled at him from a kitchen counter, falling at his feet and narrowly missing him. Another priest was called, who blessed the house and sprinkled holy water all around. And on one of his visits, the activity was so overwhelming, he left a crucifix, Bible, and some vials of holy water for the couples to use if they felt threatened. However, this only seemed to anger the poltergeist further, and it flung the crucifix around the house and threw the holy water containers against the wall. The media had also taken an interest in events, and in April 1998, news reporters entered the house with heat-seeking equipment to see for themselves the violent activity in the home. Take a look at what happened.
Brendan was also witness to a particularly violent incident. He was the only person in the house when this happened.
Whoa, what the?
A live bullet ricocheted onto the carpet. In slow motion, it appears to have come from the ceiling, then bounced off the furniture. We taped it from 2 angles.
Whoa, what the?
Once again, no thermal fingerprints on it, nothing that leads you to believe it was thrown by human.
It's worth pointing out that this was a rental house, and the landlord wasn't too happy about the damage the entity was doing to his property, and believing the tenant to be responsible, he tried to get them evicted. Ultimately, the attempt failed, but the couples moved out anyway, as they couldn't take any more. The landlord tidied up the property and relet it. Since then, there have been no public reports of any further paranormal activity. But perhaps the new tenants are simply dealing with it in their own way. Today, the events at Humpty Dup are regarded as one of the most significant supernatural occupations in Australian history. Kitchen nightmares. Brad Pryor had been experiencing strange goings-on in his home for months. Things were moving, stuff was ending up on the floor, and doors appeared to open on their own. So he decided to set up a camera in his kitchen to see if he was going mad or something more sinister was going on. For weeks, nothing untoward happened until this next footage was captured in July 2016. To start with, you can see Brad leaving the kitchen, and he claims 40 minutes later, this is what happened. Take a look. So is that a poltergeist as Brad claims? It certainly seems like something is going on. The kitchen roll could possibly be explained if a window is open, but the ornaments and the frying pan are harder to fathom. The doors flying open, the chairs falling, and the kitchen utensils flying across the room are all classic poltergeist violence, and that box falling out of the cupboards is off the scale creepy. What do you think? Real or fake? The Ghost in Red. This next anomaly is a bit strange, and certainly out of place for the type of video. It appeared on the YouTube channel Haircut Harry, and was emailed to us by Hector, a Top Fives viewer. Firstly, thanks for the submission, Hector. The channel features unique barbershops around the world, showing customers getting haircuts and shaves. This one was filmed at Sweeney Ted's in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and was uploaded on March 27, 2020. The skill of the barber is fascinating, but that is not what we're looking at today. Take a look at the footage, focusing on the window. Did you notice a woman in red walking backwards before disappearing? Just for a bit of context, all the other people in the video captured walking past the window are walking forward and do not disappear at the second pane of glass. Take another look. So what's going on here? We checked the comments, but not many people seemed to notice. I guess they were fixated on the haircut. So was there a ghost unintentionally captured in this video, or some other explanation? What do you think? Leave us a comment below. The Ghost Girl. Alice Martin had always thought there was something off in the flat that she lived in with her husband Tom and baby son Louis. The TV often turned on by itself, and her son would not settle at night and always ended up sleeping in his parents' bed. In 2020, during lockdown, Alice was scrolling through family snaps when she spotted a strange shadowy guest looming in the background. She knew that the photo had been taken in her son's room and believed the apparition may be the presence that she had felt in the home. Take a good look at this. Alice believes the strange shadowy figure looked like a little girl with long hair. Her face appeared defined and she was carrying something in her hands. Alice, who is usually skeptical of the paranormal, says she cannot explain the spooky shape, as there was no furniture or items hanging on the door at the time. It spooked the entire family so much that they moved to a new flat, and their son now sleeps soundly in his own bedroom. What do you think's going on here? Our own experience. This is a very special one for you all, as we very rarely talk about personal things on this channel. We wanted to end with an experience that we had after a family member passed away. In 2010, our much-loved great-grandma passed away at age 97. She had been a huge presence in all of our lives, and with such a character, we just thought she would live to at least 100. Christmas was her favourite time of year, and it was Christmas Day that the family last saw her alive. She passed away in the early hours of Boxing Day. However, within days of her passing, the family could feel her presence everywhere. It was as if she wasn't fully gone. We could smell her perfume and sense she was still around. Things got even stranger when photographs started being moved and things randomly fell over or switched off. But perhaps the strangest thing happened to her son, my grandpa. Nearly every day in her later years, he would visit her around 4 PM and take her favourite cream cake. After her passing, for about a month, his doorbell would ring at 4 PM, but when he went to open it, there was never anyone there. The water in their home would also inexplicably turn off at certain times of the day, something that would never usually happen. Another family member had a clown ornament on his mantelpiece that once belonged to my great-grandmother, and he would come home from work and find it turned around facing the wall. Every time it was moved back the next day, it was turned around again. These strange occurrences continued for several weeks until we all felt like she had actually gone. I can confirm that all of this is 100% true. We've heard many stories from people in the past saying similar things after a loved one is gone, and we'd love to know if you've ever experienced anything similar in the comment section below. A Ouija board gone wrong. Let's dive straight in with an extremely creepy video uploaded by Mellowbird in 2012. Mellowbird claims that this footage was filmed on Halloween night, where he sat down seemingly on his own with an Ouija board, a device that many use to contact the dead. The video is almost 8 minutes long and is filmed from 3 different camera angles in Mellowbird's haunted home. He sits at the table with the board in front of him and a large wooden cross in front of the camera. He starts by asking the board if there is anyone there, placing a glass on the table that he hopes will be moved by the ghost in question. Initially he receives no response. After altering the question slightly, his electronic doorbell camera set up next to him on the table starts to flash and ring before falling silent. For a while, Mellowbird fumbles around with his cameras before entering the bathroom. He starts to sound much more startled as he notices all of his bathroom products have been thrown from the side of the bath. Then, while he is in the bathroom, the wooden cross that was on top of the initial table is thrown to the left off-screen, seemingly by an unknown force. When Mellowbird re-enters the room, he asks the ghost to do something in the room he is currently in, and he is not disappointed. Almost immediately, the wooden cross catches fire, the entire thing engulfed in flames. He becomes visibly scared at this point and rushes to put it out, then removes the cross from the house before ending the video. Take a look.
Is there anybody here? Okay, can you do something in the room I'm actually in, please? Preferably with the sun is better lit. Which is pretty so automatic. EMF TV, K2, you people number 1, the cross has moved. Holy shit, that's... I'm not religious, but that's... Ever set fire to anything in my house again, and I'm having you exercised. Scorch them up as well. No, actually, tell you what.
Mellowbird has tons of insane videos of his supposedly haunted house, and this startling footage is pretty creepy. What do you think? Does this show real poltergeist activity, or even a demon that has been summoned from the Ouija board? Or is Mellowbird faking his footage? Let us know below. Creepy CCTV. This is a 3-minute long video uploaded to the Ghost subreddit by user WayneBruce11. Wayne claims that nobody in their house could figure out why the TV was on in the morning. Moreover, it was set to a channel that they'd never watched. Supposedly, the user's family had dealt with a suspected ghost for over 15 years, and this is the first evidence they had caught on camera that they believe shows the spirit in action. Take a look.
Facultad de Derecho de la Universidad de Granada, a Macare. Violento enfrentamiento entre partidarios.
In the video, the television can be seen flickering on and off, increasing and decreasing in brightness, and even changing channels on its own. For a while, the television seems to settle on the news. So what do you think is going on here? Is this direct evidence of a ghost operating someone's TV? This would most likely be classed as a poltergeist. Or is this a hoax? What do you think? Haunted Edinburgh Vaults. This is a creepy photo that was uploaded to Reddit at the start of 2023. Without context, the photo seems to show a person obscured by light in the foreground, with two figures looking towards them in the background. It becomes much more unsettling when you hear that the user took this picture in Edinburgh Vaults, an underground city within a city, which encompasses much of Edinburgh's Old Town. Very little light is available down in the vaults, and they are said to be haunted. Consider how much more terrifying this is then, when you hear that the uploader did not see the people in the photograph when it was taken. Even stranger is that the tour guide, the person in the foreground, had commented that she sensed something to her right. The uploader claims that there was nobody standing in that corner of the room when the photograph was taken, but in the image you can plainly see two figures standing there, looming in the darkness. They appear to be two women, one dressed in red, and slightly taller than the other, who is dressed in green. They appear to be dressed in clothing from times gone by, which would make sense given how old the vaults are. So, how can this photo be explained? Is this real-life ghost footage caught on camera, or is this a simple trick of the light? What do you think? We have been to the Edinburgh Vaults personally, and can say that they are pretty creepy. The Curse of Lakenia. This is a strange tale from the countryside of northern Georgia in USA. 40 miles northeast of Atlanta sits Lake Lanier, 59 square miles of water that was created by a man as a result of the construction of the Buford Dam in 1956. It's a popular tourist and recreational site, with thousands relaxing on the lake's shores every year. But a dark piece of history runs underneath. Since the lake was created, it is estimated that almost 700 people have lost their lives on or in its waters. This is not one isolated disaster. The most people who have died there in a single year is just over 20, but it has claimed a disproportionate amount of lives in comparison to many other lakes. Causes of death range from boating collisions, drownings, and even animal attacks. This has led many locals and supernatural believers to consider that the lake is cursed. Some of this superstition dates back to the early 1950s, when the town of Oscarville occupied some of the land that the lake currently sits on. Oscarville was a small town populated mainly by black residents who faced injustice and racism at the hands of the white population of Georgia. Across the 1900s, lynchings took place in the town. It is because of these horrific lynchings that Lake Lanier and its unusually high death rate have been labelled as cursed by some. As for ghostly legends, in 1958, a car carrying 2 women crashed off a bridge and plunged into the lake. Many years later, locals reported seeing the ghosts of these women, and one of them became known as the Lady of the Lake. Locals believe that she would try and lure victims into the water. If any of you live near here, we'd love to know if you have any personal stories with the lake, and if you'd be willing to take a trip down there in the night to see if you can witness or capture anything strange. The 1962 Halloween Massacre urban legend. In a small idyllic American town free from crime, an unimaginable horror unfolded on Halloween night 1962. A group of high school students seeking an alcohol-fueled celebration gathered at Marla's house. With her father out of town and a stash of beer readily available, it seemed like the perfect location. As the night progressed, they enjoyed the company of trick-or-treaters, played pranks and indulged in drinks. However, a shocking discovery was made when they reviewed a Polaroid photo taken by one of the students. Amongst the friendly faces, a man wearing an executioner's mask lurked in their midst. From that moment, chaos descended upon the party. Strange occurrences plagued the terrified group, who soon realized they were trapped inside a house with barred windows. The horror intensified when Marla and the photographer were found covered in blood, brutally attacked by the masked man. Panic gripped everyone as they desperately searched for escape, unaware of who could be trusted. Locked inside the house with no way out, the friends were defenseless against the relentless killer. The town was forever scarred by the ruthless massacre, which left no survivors. This urban legend states that the unidentified murderer remains at large, leaving behind only photographs and a chilling mask on a hillside outside of town. Although the authenticity of this tale remains unproven due to limited evidence, the question lingers: what do you believe? Ghost caught on camera. In 2019, a ghost hunter from Cornwall, UK, made the bold claim that he had recorded the most definitive proof yet of life after death. Mark Davis was visiting Falmouth Cemetery on Cornwall's south coast. The historic cemetery is the final resting place of almost 180 service personnel who died during the World Wars, including several who are unidentified. Using specialist equipment, Mark claims he recorded multiple instances of paranormal activity, including 2 figures appearing from the grave of 2 women. He has edited the footage to show the exact moment he believes a spirit reveals itself. Take a look.
Greet us with the wind like you do.
There is definitely some movement in the clip, but whether that is faces you can see, as Mark claims, that may be a push. However, he is convinced. What do you think? Is this proof of life after death, or is there some other explanation? the most haunted road in Missouri, the Zombie Road. In a midwestern suburb of Missouri is a 2-mile stretch of track that has the reputation as being one of the world's most haunted trails, known as Merrimack Greenway. The route meanders through the woods of St. Louis County, and the series of trails cross the site of one of the largest Native American burial mounds in the country. It was originally built in the late 1860s to provide access to the Merrimack and the railroad tracks located along the river. In the 1950s, reports of numerous encounters with eerie paranormal activity surfaced that included the spirits of indigenous people, Confederate soldiers, the tortured souls of men killed in industrial accidents, and most frightening of all, packs of child ghosts. Take a look at this photograph that is said to show the children hiding in the woods. One of the most chilling stories is about the ghost of a man hit by a train who is said to haunt the road, but after doing some research, it seems that the man may in fact be a woman, as in 1876, Della Hamilton McCullough was hit and killed by a passing train car on the tracks in Glencoe. She is the only person to have died there, so maybe her ghost is being mistaken for a male. It is definitely a female who screams at people from the doorway of the old houses along the trail, so maybe that is Della as well. Nowadays the trail is known as Zombie Road, after a man named Zombie, who allegedly escaped from a local mental hospital and disappeared into the woods, left behind nothing but blood-soaked clothes. Where he went is a mystery, but it's said he is one of the many spirits that haunt the area. At night, the path is closed to the public, possibly to protect them from the terrors that reside along it, and by day it is only passable by foot or bicycles. But don't be fooled by the picture-perfect tree-lined track. It is not all it seems, and is known as a notoriously unsettling and strange place. This is an account from a lady who had a particularly unsettling experience along Zombie Road.
We hear kind of this high-pitched squeal almost, sounding like it was from either a young girl or maybe a teenage girl, young woman, and simultaneously as we hear that sound, I feel this sharp pain on my leg.
Alex and her aunt hurry from the woods. When she gets home, a sinister surprise.
There was scratches on my leg.
Alex says she was wearing layers and riding chaps, all untorn. She assumes whatever scratched her wasn't of this world.
We'd love to know if any of you have travelled along it, and whether you encountered anything strange. If we are ever in the area, we'll be sure to check it out. What happened to Ohio kangaroos? This next one is not so much creepy, but more of a mystery. On Thursday the 11th of August, 2022, the Brewster Police Department in Ohio got a call to say a strange animal was running loose around the town. At first the police thought nothing of it, and did a quick search but found nothing. A couple of days later, 2 more witnesses came forward, saying they had spotted a kangaroo. One of the witnesses recorded this footage.
Get your brakes on. Holy f***.
If this was in Australia, then no one would think anything of it. But in Ohio, America, there are no wild kangaroos. The animal was later identified as a wallaby, and some believe there was more than one. Police tried in vain to recapture the creature, but 7 days later, it was still on the run. Police had no idea where the wallaby came from, but thought it was likely an escaped pet. However, no one came forward to claim it. The wallaby continued to evade capture, and despite reports a private company was being sent in to catch it, there have never been any updates about the wallaby. So could it still be wandering around northern Ohio? We'd love to know what happened to it, and if anyone has any updates, we'd be interested to hear in the comments section below. Being from the UK, this reminds us of the big cat sightings that get reported throughout the United Kingdom. We even have our own personal encounter with a potential big cat that maybe we'll share soon. The terrifying story of the 1976 Chiao kidnapping. This next story seems so unbelievable that it could not possibly be true, but it is. On Thursday, July 15th, 1976, at around 4 p.m, Frank Ray was driving a school bus containing 26 students from Dairyland Elementary School. They had been on a school visit to Chiao Fairgrounds swimming pool. Ahead of him, Frank could see a van blocking the road. It didn't seem like it was going to move, so Frank got out of the bus to check what the problem was, and was confronted by 3 armed men with nylon stockings over their faces. One of the men held a gun to Frank's head and then proceeded to hijack the bus and its passengers. They drove the bus to Brenda Slough, a shallow branch of the Chowchilla River, where a second van was waiting. Frank and the children were bundled into the 2 vans, whose windows had been blacked out and their interiors reinforced. The hostages were then driven around for 11 hours before being taken to a quarry in Livermore. There they were told to climb down a ladder into a buried truck. Inside was a small amount of food and water and some mattresses. The men closed the makeshift hatch, covered it in earth, then drove off and left Frank and the children in their underground prison. The kidnappers then called Chowchilla Police Department to demand a $5 million ransom. However, the phone lines were busy, so the gang decided to sleep and try again later. However, they woke to the news that the children had escaped. Whilst entombed underground, Frank became convinced the metal hatch was about to collapse, so the group piled up the mattresses in an attempt to escape. Eventually, one of the students managed to wriggle through the soil covering the hatch and alerted a night watchman. The children and Mr. Ray were freed after their 16-hour ordeal. The kidnappers were quickly apprehended. The ringleader was Frederick Woods, whose father owned the quarry where the hostages were held. The other 2 were brothers Richard and James Schoenfeld. All 3 came from very privileged backgrounds and only concocted the bizarre scheme when they heard Ronald Reagan put out a press statement claiming that the state of California had $1 billion surplus and felt they could easily afford the ransom fee for safe return of the children. All the children were physically unharmed, but for many years suffered PTSD and other mental anguish due to trauma. The assailants were jailed for life, although they have all been released after spending most of their lives incarcerated. After Woods was released, he is reported to have said, "I didn't need the money, I wanted the money." As for Frank, well, he was hailed as a hero and was eventually gifted the yellow school bus he was driving that day. Pretty crazy story, right? The Haunted Mr. Chu House. Lastly, we'll be taking a look at an extremely haunted house. In the heart of Delaware State in America stands a dilapidated mansion, almost taken over by nature. It's known as the Mr. Chu House, and the building has been the subject of a chilling legend for decades. In the late 1800s, the mansion belonged to a wealthy merchant called Samuel Chu. He was known for his elusiveness and eccentricities, and it was rumoured he had dealings with the occult. However, Chu's obsession with dark arts led him down a treacherous path, and it was speculated during one of his rituals he had unleashed malevolent spirits that had taken over his mind and his home. His once lavish mansion became a prison for his tormented soul. The locals were fascinated by what was going on in the house, but no one dared to go near it. Many years later, a teenager named Jack heard about the legend, and despite warnings to stay away, was determined to visit the house and tried to dispel the myths. On a moonlit night, Jack gathered up some friends, and armed with flashlights and bravado, they made their way to the mansion. As the house loomed before them, its once grand facade was now a crumbling shell. As they ventured inside, they felt an uneasy presence, and Jack felt a chill come over him. Wading through cobwebs and dust, the friends explored the dilapidated rooms in eerie silence, jumping at the shadows their flashlights were casting. As they journeyed deeper into the building, Jack felt an inexplicable pull towards a hidden room on the upper floor. He opened the creaking door, and it revealed a room filled with books, strange artifacts, and a dark, foreboding atmosphere. As he sifted through the contents, he came across Samuel Chu's journal. The pages were filled with terrifying accounts of the occult and cryptic symbols. It appeared the rumours were true, and Mr. Chu had indeed sold his soul to the devil, and had summoned malevolent spirits that now haunted the old mansion. Jack's friends urged him to leave and put the journal down, but Jack ignored their pleas. He was enthralled with its contents and wanted to know more. As he read on, he realized that Samuel Chu had sought immortality through a dark ritual, sacrificing the souls of innocent victims to sustain his own life, and he was now imprisoned in his mansion for eternity, a crazed soul with no escape. Suddenly, Jack could feel a chill in the air, and a haunting melody started to play. Jack's friends who were standing in the doorway turned around and saw a male apparition emerging from the shadows. It was the ghost of Samuel Chu. His eyes glowed as they fixated on the visitors to his home. A terrified Jack spoke to the figure, telling him he knew about the innocent victims he had sacrificed in search of eternal life. He urged Chu to find peace and release himself from the cycle of darkness and atonement he was in. He spoke of forgiveness and redemption. Jack's friends joined in urging Mr. Chu to seek forgiveness, and it seemed to work. Mr. Chu was being shown compassion and empathy from a living being, and this seemed to confuse the malevolent energy that was trapped in his soul. He gave out a huge gut-wrenching cry before disappearing into the darkness. The friends stood dumbfounded, but the evil presence they once felt had lifted, and the air seemed clearer, as if the heavy burden that once hung over it had gone. Jack and his friends left the mansion, believing they had released Samuel Chu from his torture. Or had they? Until the next group of brave souls venture up to the Chu House, we'll never know. How would you like to be working alone in your office late at night, like we often do? Perhaps you have a deadline and the boss is breathing down your neck for some outcomes. Or just imagine working late and realizing that something creepy was in the office with you and was going to turn your job into a nightmare. That's what happened to the woman in the next video. The CCTV footage was posted on the Facebook page of a paranormal team from Malaysia named Ouija. It begins with a chair starting to move on its own behind the woman. She probably senses that something is not quite right as she removes her headphones. Imagine her getting that creeping feeling up her spine that someone or something is in the room with her. Her breathing increases and her heart begins to race. Then her hair stands up on end as her muscles tighten and she gets goosebumps. As the adrenaline enters her bloodstream, her pupils dilate. Is the fear real, or is she just overreacting? Then a heavy glass water bottle is suddenly flung off the table and onto the floor, thrown by an unseen hand. The office worker is visibly shocked and covers her ears from the loud noise, staring in disbelief and astonishment at the bottle now rolling on the carpet. Is the fear real, or could there be some plausible explanation? Deciding to ignore the activity, the woman picks up the bottle and returns to her work at the computer. But then, in a final act, the chair that she is sitting on is violently yanked backwards. Sounds hard to believe, but take a look. Could this be a poltergeist escalating its activity, moving on to bigger things in an attempt to grab the worker's attention? Whatever the explanation, something has wielded a lot of force to move that chair in that way. Finally, giving in to the escape part of the flight or fight response. The woman quickly switches off her terminal, grabs her bag and leaves, probably for the best. What do you think of this footage? Hushaby baby. It's one thing for an adult to experience paranormal activity, but when the ghost decides to begin terrorizing an innocent baby, it's then that the experience becomes truly chilling. In 2022, Ashley Scott lived in Elizabethton, Tennessee, with her partner Chris Geisler and their 1-year-old baby boy Gavin. Ashley had experienced several mysterious events throughout her life. When she was a young girl, she shared a bedroom with her sister. One night, Ashley awoke to see a little boy standing beside her sister's bed. She admits that at the time she was scared, but later came to believe that the ghost boy was harmless. Ashley didn't experience any more otherworldly occurrences during her life until she moved into the apartment in Elizabethton. Over the 3 years of living in the apartment together, the couple have experienced too many odd things that they couldn't explain, but they just dealt with them because they were never any physical threat to anyone. The odd things included strange noises and the inexplicable movement of objects around the home. These are all typical poltergeist behaviour. Not long before Ashley became pregnant, she and Chris heard the unmistakable sound of pots and pans crashing together. It was coming from the other side of the apartment, but when the couple went to look, nothing had been disturbed. Ashley, who was always unfazed by the idea that there was something else there, and always kind of accepted it, has now become fearful of what the entity will do next. She said, "I'm a stay-at-home mum, and I'm always around Gavin, so he's always protected as much as I can protect him. But it scares me because you don't know what any other force might be able to do." It was while she was out grocery shopping on the 1st of October 2022 when Chris sent her a video that really freaked her out. The bizarre footage was caught on a household security camera and shows Chris sitting in the bedroom watching TV. 1-year-old Gavin begins to crawl into the room through the open door. Gavin is on all fours when he suddenly stops and stares in amazement at his father before he is violently jolted forward as though he has been pushed from behind. The baby, who almost falls flat on his face from the force of the movement, actually turns around to look at whatever it was that pushed him, although he can see that nothing is there. Take a look at this. Traditionally, poltergeists are described as troublesome spirits who haunt a particular person rather than a location. Could this spirit be the ghost of the little boy that Ashley saw when she was younger? Maybe he has followed her and now decided to harass and torment her by pushing Gavin because he is jealous of the baby. What do you think? The Lost Child. Midge Coon was driving along the Hume Highway in Bardia, a suburb of Sydney in New South Wales. It was a Sunday evening just before 8 p.m, as Mitch and his mother were travelling back to the Gold Coast along the dark highway. They were shocked to see the figure of a small child standing in the middle of the left lane of the busy 4-lane road. The child appeared to be dressed in blue clothes, possibly a large jacket or coat, or perhaps a blanket, and the figure appears to be lacking any real solidity as they stepped towards the vehicle. Mitch was unable to stop safely because he had been out racing bikes and he was towing a toy trailer, a type of RV that hauls equipment like snowmobiles and quad bikes. The hauler was huge and stopping suddenly would probably have caused an accident. But the mother and son were shocked and worried for the child's well-being, so Mitch's mum immediately rang 000 to report the shocking sighting and give their exact location. About 45 minutes later, at 8:29 p.m, Mitch made another phone call to the police, this time to Macquarie Fields police station, and offered to hand over his dashcam footage. But he was relieved to hear that a child had been collected safely and was on his way home, so the footage would not be needed. Mitch then posted the video of the frightening incident on social media, happy that the child was safe. But in a strange twist, Mitch later found out that the police who had attended and commenced a search of the area never found any child. The search was called off at 3:45 a.m. the following morning because there had been no reports of any missing person in the area. So what do you think? The child was not reported missing, so could it have been a kidnapped child who had escaped and was recaptured by their snatcher before the police got there? Or maybe the spirit of a child who had been killed on the road and now keeps returning to the area where the trauma took place? What do you think? The Poltergeist of Millwood. In another story from Australia, Norm Hurst, the owner of Brompton IGA store in Adelaide, had already been warned by the previous owners that the supermarket was haunted, but he brushed it off as nonsense. But that didn't stop him from being shocked when he saw actual evidence of paranormal activity recorded on the store's CCTV, and it would seem that the store's ghost has a sweet tooth. Footage can be seen of a packet of fruit roll-ups seemingly being thrown from a shelf before landing in the middle of an aisle. The product in question was kept 6 meters away from where it landed, at the other end of the next lane. And it doesn't just slide off the shelf either, it looks as though it had been pushed. The unexplained incident occurred at 11:30 p.m. after the store had closed and no one was on the premises. The CCTV cameras are motion activated and shut down automatically after 15 minutes of no movement. Footage from one camera shows the package suddenly appearing on the floor. The other two cameras show the fruit roll landing there, which would suggest that the motion sensors were triggered before the roll appeared. The burglar alarm was not activated, and there was no sign of a break-in. Take a look.
The CCTV picks up and records. If nothing's movement for 15 minutes, it just instantly starts. So one of the cameras just shows the packet of roll-ups arriving on the ground. The other camera is already going, and we've had 3 cameras for some reason recording pretty much all night, staggered start, and 3 just going. Why are they going when it's security alarms on, we detect movement, detect glass shatter, yet they're running all night? And then you got one camera looking down the aisle, and for some reason the roll-ups have just flung out of the bottom shelf. It's not just slid off, it's been thrown out of the past it, yet the roll-ups are kept 12 metres away.
Ghost hunters have been drawn to the supermarket to investigate, leading to a potential link being made with the murder of a boxer who was shot to death in front of the store in 1998. Could he be the ghostly culprit? Jessica Pulverenti, co-founder of Adelaide Paranormal Detectives, claimed that the footage appeared to be genuine, and said that there didn't seem to be any human interference, staging or wires involved. She also gave Norm some advice on how to deal with unwanted spirits, such as trying to find out who the ghost might be and what they might want. This could be achieved using electronic voice phenomena. Using prayers and cleansing rituals could also help the spirit to safely move on. Other places in Adelaide that are thought to be supernatural hotspots include Carclew Youth Arts Mansion, where the spectre of a woman who was thrown from the tower to her death makes regular visits, and Adelaide Arcade, which is host to the ghost of a former caretaker. But it's Adelaide Jail that holds the #1 spot for the most haunted place in the area. It is probably so packed with souls because of the 45 executions that were held there. The face in the door. The final piece of footage in this video is an eerie clip that was taken by a top 5 viewer named Stephen, who used to be a student of Montevallo in Alabama. Stephen took the video of the face in the door and wanted us to discuss the death of a young girl named Condi, who once resided in the halls over 100 years ago. Now a co-ed institution and classed as one of America's best colleges, the university was once a female-only technical college. Established in 1896, it was known as the Alabama Girls Industry School. It was 12 years after the opening the story of 16-year-old Condi Cunningham began, in 1908. Connie and her 4th floor dorm mates were breaking the rules. However, they had done it before, and there was no real harm in them all gathering together in Condi's room to share some snacks after lights out. The girls sat cross-legged on the beds, dressed in their nightgowns, whispering and giggling, trying desperately to keep the noise down and not get caught. It's not known who came up with the idea of making some hot chocolate by using a Bunsen burner to heat it up, but someone accidentally knocked the burner over. It was the bed that caught on fire first, quickly followed by Condi's flammable nightgown, which went up like tissue paper. In a panic, Condi ran out of the bedroom and down the corridor screaming. As she ran, the motion fanned the flames, which completely engulfed her. By the time her friends had caught up with her and managed to put out the flames with a rug, Condi was badly burned all over her body. She lingered on for a couple of excruciating days before she succumbed to her injuries and died. We already know that it's not unusual for hauntings to be experienced where an emotional or traumatic event has occurred, and Condi Cunningham's footsteps were soon heard pounding up and down the halls over the 4th floor of the residence hall. Her spirit could also be heard shrieking, and there were reports of a girl screaming, "Help me." Condi's dormitory room was used for a while after the tragedy, until one day when another student who was staying there heard strange noises out in the corridor. Alarmed, she opened the door to take a peep and was horrified to see the spectre of a blazing girl running down the hall towards her. Shocked and terrified, she quickly slammed the door shut and turned around to find that her bed was actually on fire. She left college the next day and never returned. It is the door of Condi's old room that is shown in the video, and it's quite unsettling to see what happened to it after her violent death. The image of Condi's contorted face with her hair ablaze supposedly appeared in the grain of the wood, The headmistress at the time was so disturbed by the bizarre occurrence that she had the door removed and replaced, but soon after the face appeared again. The door was supposedly replaced several times, but the result was always the same. The screaming face returned. The room was eventually sealed off. The last door was removed and is kept in storage at the university archives. It is brought out and displayed every October as a way for the students to get into the Halloween spirit. Even to this day, there are still reports of Condi screaming up and down the halls and in the bathrooms at night. The ghost of Mad Anthony. During the Revolutionary Wars, General Anthony Wayne was an American statesman and officer. George Washington thought he was one of the best military planners and strategic commanders of the American Revolution. Wayne was born in 1745 on his family's acre estate, named Waynesboro, in Chester County, Pennsylvania. He was educated at a private academy in Philadelphia, and at the age of 20, he began work as a surveyor for Benjamin Franklin. In 1775, when the American Revolution began, Wayne assembled a militia and became colonel of the 4th Regiment in Pennsylvania. He was successful during the invasion of Canada, where he went to the aid of Benedict Arnold. For this, Wayne was promoted to Brigadier General and earned the name Mad Anthony, because he became known for his fiery temperament. In one incident, he severely punished a drunken spy who screamed that Wayne was mad, as he was being whipped on the colonel's orders. In 1777, Wayne also saved Washington's troops from a proper pasting at the Battle of Brandywine, and led his men on to other decisive victories, like the Battle of Stony Point, along the River Hudson. Once the war was over, Wayne settled down in Georgia on land awarded to him because of his outstanding military service. His life was touched by scandal when his wife left him over an affair and he became bankrupt. He became a Georgia state representative before returning to the army, where once again he was a success, this time in the Northwest Indian War. He died at 51 in 1796 in Erie, Pennsylvania. Wayne was buried 2 days later in a plain wooden coffin. In accordance with his wishes, he was interred in full army uniform at the base of the flagstaff on the blockhouse. Brass tacks were used on the top of the coffin to spell out his initials, age, and year of death. Mad Anthony Wayne lay there peacefully for 12 years, until his family decided that Wayne was a war hero who needed a more fitting burial, and made arrangements to take his bones home to rest in St. David's Church Cemetery, closer to his former home in Radnor Township. On opening the coffin, Wayne's son, Colonel Isaac Wayne, was shocked to find that his father's body was beautifully preserved and remarkably intact, except for one of his legs, which had rotted away. It was not the pile of crumbling bones that Isaac was expecting, and now out of the box, the corpse would rot and stink, which was going to make moving the body across the state difficult. James Wallace, a local doctor, came up with the idea of dissecting Wayne's body and boiling it into a large vat to strip the bones of any flesh. The flesh and the clothing were reburied at the foot of the flagstaff in Erie, and the bones were loaded onto the back of a wagon for the 400-mile journey along Route 322. In early 19th century America, the roads were hardly well made, and by the time Isaac reached home, he found, to his horror, that many of his father's bones were missing, having fallen from the cart as it bumped over one of the many tree stumps, ruts, and rocks on the grueling journey. Isaac instantly regretted his decision to exhume his father's body and remained remorseful for the rest of his life. Stories of General Mad Anthony Wayne's ghost soon began to surface. He was seen on the anniversary of his birthday, every New Year's morning, taking the long journey back to Erie in search of his lost bones. He has been spotted riding his horse Nancy, dressed in his colonel uniform, frequently stopping to search. He has also been seen at his family home in Waynesboro, which is also haunted by the ghost of his great-grandson's wife, who died there in 1889 during a fire on the top floor. But only women have been able to hear the ghostly screams, breaking of glass and crying. It seems that Mad Anthony's ghost just cannot rest in peace. A bit of extra information: in the DC comic universe, Batman's alias Bruce Wayne is a direct descendant of Mad Anthony Wayne. The Yucca Man. This video went viral in August of 2016, and it was claimed that the footage was shot in a desert-like wasteland somewhere in Portugal. And the voices that are heard in the clip are definitely speaking in Portuguese. It has subsequently been claimed that the video was recorded in the Navajo Nation sometime in 2007. The short piece of footage shows some sort of bizarre creature slowly plodding along through the barren landscape. The unknown beast looks to be very tall and is walking upright on 2 feet with a stooped posture. It has very long arms but looks humanoid in appearance, ambling along until it disappears behind a bush. Take a look.
Caralho, velho. Puta, onde que tá agora, pô? Olha lá, ó.
Many explanations as to what the mysterious creature could be have been suggested, including Bigfoot, Yeti, Chupacabra, alien, or some sort of fantastic hybrid of one or more cryptids. Tales of large, hairy, ape-like creatures exist throughout the world. Stories about the Yeti have been around for centuries, and the creature in the video does look similar to the description given of the Yeti and Bigfoot. There have been consistent sightings of these supersized beasts. Evidence of the Yeti has been found in the Himalayas, the inhospitable Asian mountain range that has some of the world's largest peaks. Bigfoot, or Sasquatch as it is commonly referred to, is said to inhabit the densely forested areas of North America. Neither of these environments is like the terrain seen in the video. But the Joshua Tree National Park in South California, where the Mojave and Colorado deserts meet, is very similar in appearance. And it's there where there have been sightings of another large ape-like animal that has become known as the Yucca Man. Described by one witness, who happened to be a Marine, as being extremely hairy and at least 12 feet tall, and then by a couple who saw the beast in 1979 and said it was covered in long tan hair and was as large as a refrigerator with arms, hanging down below its knees. So could this video clip show footage of some sort of giant bipedal mammal, or maybe an alien or paranormal entity? What do you think? A family madness. Padmaja and her husband, Purushottam Naidu, killed their 2 daughters in January 2021 because they believed the women were filled with evil spirits. The 2 women, Alekia, aged 27, was an engineer with a management degree, and her younger sister, Sai Divya, who was 23, had a business administration degree. The women had returned home to stay with the family during the COVID lockdown when they were bludgeoned to death with a dumbbell in some sort of bizarre sacrificial ritual. The whole family, although highly educated, was also highly superstitious, and the daughters had been brainwashed into trusting the beliefs of their parents and may have willingly participated in the ritual, which indicated that the women could come back to life after 2 days. The parents would have killed themselves as well if police had not intervened, as they believed that they too would return from the dead. The mother was still in a trance-like state when she was arrested and was seen singing and dancing. She refused to cooperate with the police or medical practitioners at the government hospital. She even stopped them from performing a COVID-19 test, stating that she was the incarnation of Shiva and gave birth to Corona, so the virus could not harm her. Padmaja went on to say that she had venom in her throat and that the virus would soon end without the need for a vaccine. Padmaja became distraught when the police tried to enter their 3-story house. The girls were lying in a pool of blood, and she said that they were naked and that the men should not see them like that. She was very upset that the police were wearing shoes as they searched the house, especially in the prayer room. Superstitious beliefs are very common in India, where tradition and religion have often been passed down from one generation to another for hundreds of years, and many believe in the idea of spirit possession. According to the police, who interviewed the couple, they had decided to sacrifice their daughters because the women were possessed, and they would return once the evil spirits had left their bodies. They thought that the present time, Kali Yuga, the 4th and worst of the 4 world ages, was ending. A time full of conflict, sin, darkness, misery, quarrel, and hypocrisy. And they thought that the COVID epidemic was the cataclysm that would usher in the dawn of Satya Yuga, the first and best of the yugas, also known as the Golden Age, which their reborn daughters would be able to enjoy. Sadly, this was not the case, as they were not resurrected 2 days later. It's unknown what happened to the mother and father, but they will most likely spend the rest of their lives in prison. The Legend of Bunnyman. It began on October 19th, 1970, when Robert Bennett, a US Air Force Academy cadet, was driving home with his fiancée. It was nearly midnight on the dark rural roads of Burke, Virginia. The couple were returning from a football game, and despite the late hour, decided to call at the house of Bennett's uncle who lived nearby. Parking his car in a field across from his uncle's house, Bennett and his fiancée were shocked to see something moving near the rear of the car. Suddenly there was a loud crash as the passenger side window was hit so hard that it shattered. A man began shouting at them, "You're on private property and I have your tag number." Frightened, Bennett quickly drove away, only to later find a hatchet on the floor of the car. They reported the incident to the police, stating that the strange man had been wearing a white suit with rabbit ears. The creepy figure was seen again just 10 days later by Paul Phillips, a security guard at a housing project. It was 10:30 at night when Phillips came across a man in a white rabbit suit with floppy ears chopping away with a hatchet at the porch post of an unfinished house. The bunny man threatened Phillips as he approached him, saying, "You are trespassing. If you come any closer, I'll chop off your head." Phillips went to retrieve his handgun, but by the time he had returned, the bunny man had disappeared into the trees. It wasn't long before sightings of the mysterious man were reported in and around the area. More than 50 were described to the police over the following weeks. One report stated that a man in a white rabbit suit had eaten a cat. The Colchester Overpass, a railway bridge near Clifton, has often been linked to the legend and has become known as Bunnyman Bridge. And there are tales of teenagers found hanging there with their throats slashed. There have also been stories of other gruesome murders connected to the legend, with a possible body count of up to 32 victims, most of which are children. Whatever the truth is, one thing remains constant: the creepy man is always seen wearing a disturbing white bunny costume, and has become known as the Bunny Man. Fear itself. Our final video was recorded during an Ouija board gathering, which was hosted by Mary Shapiro. She and her two friends all placed their fingertips on the planchette, which is moved around the flat board by supernatural forces. The spirit board is illustrated with letters of the alphabet, numbers, and the words yes and no. Mary begins the session by asking the board if a spirit is there, and on being given a positive answer, she goes on to ask for its name. The planchette spells out the word fear, then Mary asks if the entity answering is dead. The reply is no, and the spirit goes on to say that it is not human. But when asked, then what are you? The unsettling reply is you. When she asks what do you want, the spirit chillingly replies Mary, just before there is a noise so loud that the camera shakes. Mary is convinced that her home is now being haunted, and this is the exact moment when the spirit entered the house. She believes that she opened a portal that day, and is now struggling to close it. Many believe that taking part in an Ouija board can allow spirits to enter the place in which you participate in the game. We'd love to know if any of you have your own experiences with the Ouija board, and if any of you plan doing one this month. Terrifying sound. Headphones on for this one, everyone. We're going to kick things off with a very scary sound. This clip in the video is only 20 or so seconds long, but the content is the stuff of nightmares. It was recorded within the home of somebody living in Philadelphia on the 10th of February 2007. According to the text added in towards the start of the video, the uploader, Don Garvey, claims that the homeowner had heard some strange noises coming from the basement of the house throughout the middle of the night. They placed a microphone in the basement the following night to record anything that might have been down there. 3 long days passed and nothing was heard or caught on the tape. On the third night, however, something extremely scary was recorded. Before the sound plays, the uploader comments that while the sound has been amplified by 20 times the original volume, nothing has been done to edit the video. Take a listen, but warning, what you're about to hear is disturbing. Guttural bellows and screams can be heard coming from the basement, a strange combination of what sounds like a human and a wild animal. Noises that you would expect to come from a pig or even an elephant are present in the video, but there is a very uniquely human quality to them. The sounds are almost identical to the stereotypical noises made by demons from both folklore and popular media, and are very unsettling to say the least. So what do you think? Is it a ghost, a demon, an animal, a person playing a trick, or something else entirely? Is this family home haunted to the max? What do you think? Michael's haunted house. Let's take a look at a video that claims to show real paranormal activity caught on camera. This video was uploaded to YouTube 12 years ago by a user by the name of Michael DiMaggi. It starts with the text that introduces the video. Recently my brother has been claiming that our house is haunted, Michael says. At first I didn't believe him, but upon filming one of the events, I have been convinced. Michael has compiled some of the clips into a 7-minute video to show these happenings to the world. After showing some shots of his house, Michael records a quick conversation with presumably his brother, who says that he believes a ghost is present in the house. He has supposedly heard noises and has seen things moving around on their own in his house. The video then cuts to a shot of a room with a wooden chair pulled up against a desk. Michael's camera points towards it, when the chair, seemingly on its own, shoots across the room to the right. Understandably spooked, he quickly runs away. As the video continues, Michael sets up more cameras throughout his house, in what appears to be the living room. A small orb can be seen drifting across the camera, before fading away into the night. The following night, the same chair can be seen drifting across the floor in the living room once again, seemingly on its own. He wakes up the next morning to see the chair far from where he left it. Take a look at these clips. So what do you think? Michael addresses the idea that it does look like a prank or a setup in the video, which is something that is always a possibility. That being said, his reaction looks genuine and the videos are pretty creepy. Is this a haunted house and true paranormal activity caught on camera, or just clever camera trickery? What do you think? The Beast of Bladenboro. On the night of December 31st, 1953, just as the residents of the North Carolina town of Bladenboro were preparing to bring in the new year, a local man by the name of Johnny Vorse encountered something truly disturbing. Late at night, Johnny was awoken by a sound around the back of the house and went to go and check on his 2 dogs. To his shock and dismay, both of his beloved hounds had been killed by an unknown assailant, torn to shreds near their kennels. A grisly duo of deaths that only a large animal could cause. Across the course of the next few days, the attacks would continue, seemingly made by the same creature. Across the first week of 1954, 6 dogs, a pet rabbit, and even a goat were killed. All of the carcasses were discovered in terrible states. Bones were crushed, flesh was torn, and blood spilled everywhere. What could have caused this? The animal may have been spotted a few days before the first death. In fact, on the 29th of December 1953, a dog was found killed in a similar manner to those that met their end in Bladdenborough, and the assailant was seen running away from the attack as it happened. The animal that killed the dog was said to be 5 feet long, jet black and sleek. Other eyewitness reports in Bladdenborough would describe it as much smaller with bushy fur, almost like a small bear. In some circumstances, it was even seen with what was presumed to be a baby alongside it. Some reported to hear a noise like a crying baby just before the dogs were killed, presumed to have been produced by the attacking animal, but it was only ever seen in passing glimpses. Most of the witness reports tended to describe the animal as cat-like. In some cases, it was supposedly similar to a bobcat. In others, it was more like a large mountain lion. These reports were inconsistent and did little to help the residents understand what had killed their dogs. The hunt for the animal began on the night of January 3rd, when Roy Fors, the chief of police in Bladdenborough, took his dog out to search for the attacker. Alarmingly, the dogs refused to follow the scent and acted fearful when Roy tried to encourage them. Over the course of the next few days, over 800 people took to the woods and swamps looking for the animal that had terrorized the town, who were joined by another 800 on January 7th. These hunting parties were unsuccessful. The only potential success of these hunts came from a man named Luther Davis, who on the 13th of January trapped and shot a bobcat. When he contacted the papers, however, he was met with skepticism that an animal of relatively small stature could have inflicted such wounds on the dogs that were killed. To this day, no single species has been narrowed down and named for the attacks. The nature of the wounds and the reported size of the animal would lead many to believe that a bear or mountain lion were responsible, but some have considered coyotes or even pantherine cats, such as leopards and jaguars, that had possibly escaped from private collections or zoos. Others believe it was some kind of mythical creature. It's a strange tale, and one that still needs explaining. What do you think happened? Haunted Kitchen. The origins of this video are unknown, but it's a surprising watch, even if it isn't the scariest out of today's selections. This video begins with a man recording himself working in his kitchen, presumably recording a DIY tutorial as he prepares materials on the counter. Behind him can be seen a series of cupboards, and he faces away from them as he talks to the camera. It starts like any other video, as the man talks to the camera and works away. Suddenly, however, a static-like sound starts to build up in the background. Dissonant and eerie, the distortion builds for several seconds until an open cupboard door behind the man slams itself shut, seemingly on its own. Startled, the man turns around to check what has happened, and the door is alarmingly closed. He does not appear to hear the static fuzz as it builds up. It's a strange video, and we do not have much information on it, but what does it show? Could this be a real poltergeist caught on camera, or is this a simple piece of camera trickery? What do you think? Possession. We'll end on a very creepy video that speaks for itself, uploaded by YouTuber user Simon Woods in May 2023. It starts relatively placidly, depicting what seems to be a middle-aged woman lying in her bed with her arms crossed over her body. There are multiple people present in the dingy-looking room, and a man, presumably the one holding the camera, speaks to her in Spanish, calmly and slowly, about the power of God and repentance. The conversation, whilst remaining calm, takes a sinister turn when the man asks the woman, "How long do you suffer?" She replies by telling the man that she has been suffering since the age of 3, from a curse passed on to her by her father. She claims to be very sick and continuously praises God as the man asks her further questions. The woman is so calm that the man even claims that she doesn't look sick and that she is full of kindness. Things take a turn for the worst around 2.5 minutes in, when the woman begins to vacantly stare up at the ceiling. No longer does she make eye contact with the man, and her responses become blunt and aggressive. In a stark contrast to the conversation she was having just a few seconds ago, the woman begins to accuse the man of being egotistical and exploitative. Around 4 minutes in, the woman starts swearing at the man and begins to convulse and thrash in her bed. Her face contorts, and she even begins frothing at the mouth, as she violently fights against a seemingly unknown force taking over her body. The woman seems to attempt to repel whatever is taking over her by questioning it, flipping back and forth between desperation and aggression for a grueling 10 minutes. In this time, the man attempts to bring her back to reality by reciting prayers and encouraging her to return to Christ, but the exorcism seems to have little effect. Take a look at the video.
Έχεις εξουσία και τα κάνεις αυτά. Έχεις εξουσία. Αυτό είναι το πρόσωπό σου. Αυτό είναι το πρόσωπό σου. Νομίζεις ότι εγώ θα σε αφήσω να κάνεις δουλειά μέχρι και η ψυχή μου να βγει, θα υπηρετώ το Χριστό μου.
Τι πάτε στο Πατάπιο.
Τις 9 του μηνός θα πάει στον Άγιο Πατάπιο.
Εσύ θα με έρθεις στους.
As you can see, it ends with a black title card that simply states, sadly part 2 was never aired because her mother changed her mind about it and didn't let them. We may never know who this woman is or what became of her, but we do know it is incredibly creepy. What do you make of it? The Haunted Pub. This story comes from the Coniston Tavern in Warwickshire, UK. This usually quiet pub was the topic of spooky speculation and concern when suspected poltergeist activity started to take place inside. It started with the customer's glass moving, seemingly on its own, off the edge of his table and onto the floor, smashing the glass and spilling the drink everywhere. This was followed by another unsettling incident, the Monday after, when the CCTV cameras captured footage of a glass placed on top of the bar exploding. Again, this incident looks as though it happened entirely on its own, with nobody having damaged the glass. Nobody was hurt by the shattered glass, but it has raised several questions about what could be behind it. Take a look. What do you think? Customers and staff within the pub claim that the building could be haunted by the ghosts of a former tenant of the flat above. Do you think someone was playing a trick, the glass randomly exploded, or this is proof of the paranormal? Ghost in the Attic. We've featured Mellowbird's videos many times over the years, and this next video was uploaded to his channel. He claims to have caught poltergeist activity on 2 separate cameras within his attic. The first on a handheld camera and the second on a trial camera. The footage begins with video from the trial camera placed at the back of the attic. Mellowbird enters the attic with the camcorder in his hand, and after a few seconds something very creepy takes place. To the right of the man is a wooden board, against which lays the lid of a bucket. Seemingly out of nowhere, the lid shoots across the attic towards the trial camera, making him jump. It's a blink and you'll miss it scenario. The lid travels very fast, as though it was thrown by some unknown force. The video then continues with the man venturing further into his attic. At this point, he starts to hear objects moving around, but we do not see anything in particular. Bangs and clatters can be heard off screen, and they alert Mellowbird, who looks visibly scared. Following this, a small object catapults itself from the box to the left of the man, flipping in front of his eyes to the other side of the attic. Take a look. The same footage is then played from the handheld camera, which offers a point of view perspective of these creepy happenings taking place. It's a pretty creepy video, and one that looks like it wouldn't be easy to fake. Mellowbird's reactions as always seem genuine, and there's not enough space for another person to be present up there without them being seen. So what do you think? Is this just a strange coincidence? Is Mellowbird pranking us? Or does he really have poltergeist activity within his home, and some of the best documented footage on all of YouTube? The terrifying final moments of Michael Rockefeller. Let's take a sidestep from the paranormal now and talk about Michael Rockefeller. If this is true, then his final moments are truly terrifying. Let's first talk about the man himself. In 1960, Michael Rockefeller, son of former US Vice President Norman Rockefeller, graduated from Harvard University. Promptly after, he would go on to travel the world. His father was an avid art collector, and Michael quickly found himself working on the board at his museum. He spent time in Japan and Venezuela before deciding to undertake an expedition to somewhere he thought few people would get the chance to visit. This expedition took him to the island of New Guinea, off the northern coast of Australia. Michael's goals were to collect art made by the local Asmat people of New Guinea, a society who were all but uncontacted by the nations of the Western world. Few Asmat people had ever seen a white person, and Asmat folklore dictated that the lands outside New Guinea were the spirit world. Michael and his team would likely have been seen as supernatural entities, from another plane of existence to the Asmat people. It is thought that as a result, they were very cautious about Michael when he approached them to purchase their art, items which were often used in religious rituals. Michael was fascinated by their culture and aimed to unite his culture with that of the Asmat people. He would create an in-depth anthropological research study of them for a new exhibition within Norman Rockefeller's museum. Michael would return to the Asmat people in 1961, but it's unknown whether or not he actually made it to the island. Rough waters caused his boat to capsize, and Michael soon found himself clinging to the side of the vessel for dear life. He attempted to swim for shore, claiming he could make it despite being 12 miles away from New Guinea, and was never seen again. Rumours about Michael's fate vary greatly. Some say he was attacked and killed by sharks, some say that he drowned, some say that he made it to New Guinea and managed to integrate with the locals. In 2014, however, Carl Hoffman, a National Geographic reporter, dropped a bombshell. Apparently, when Dutch missionaries inquired into Michael's disappearance, they heard from the local Asmat people that members of their group had killed Michael. The following year, a Dutch police officer, Wim van der Waal, even managed to find a skull in Asmat lands that was supposedly that of Michael. In fear of the native population rising against them, the Dutch did not take the investigation any further. But here's where things get dark. If Michael was killed by the Asmat, then it would not have been a particularly pleasant death. Carl Hoffman inquired about the American tourist who went missing years ago, and reports that the Asmat mistook him for a Dutch soldier, following a bloody battle over territory just prior to Michael's arrival. He was supposedly captured on the beach as he swam towards New Guinea by the sons of those killed by Dutch generals. They presumed Michael was a straggler from the conflict, and speared him to death. Carl Hoffman then reported that Michael's head was severed, and the Asmat people, renowned cannibals, consumed his brain in a ritual feast, before cooking and serving his body to the villagers. His bones were then turned into weapons and tools for hunting. The tribe's people reportedly believed that through killing Michael, they were restoring balance to the island. To this very day, Michael's death is still shrouded in mystery. Is Carl Hoffman's story to be believed, or did Michael simply die in the struggle to get to land when his boat sank off the coast of New Guinea? We may never know, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. The Ukrainian Yeti. This next footage was filmed in a remote forest in Ukraine, believed to be in Yalta, on the Crimean Peninsula, and it supposedly shows the elusive Yeti walking through the forest. Similar to Bigfoot, the Yeti is an ape-like creature, but unlike its western counterpart Bigfoot, is more likely to inhabit the colder regions of the world. Sometimes referred to as the abominable snowman, it has been spotted in the Himalayas, Russia, northern India, and Ukraine. Over the years, many disputed sightings, video recordings, and photographs have been shown to try and prove the existence of the bipedal creature. This footage is over 10 years old and shows a terrified Ukrainian man filming the beast from behind a tree. Take a look.
Серега, что это? Серега, да ну, Серега. Серега, ну.
the guy filming seems genuinely terrified, and if that is fake acting, it's damn good. So is this a genuine Yeti sighting, or just another prankster dressed in a fursuit? What do you think? Kitchen poltergeist. In our last video, we'll take a look at a kitchen poltergeist. This was uploaded by a YouTuber and is a relatively low quality video, and only 1 minute or so in length, that offers a view of a small kitchen corner. After 40 seconds into the video, something strange happens. One of the mugs begins to drift towards the back of the countertop, seemingly moved by an unseen force. The mug collides with another as it travels, creating a clattering noise before it reaches the kitchen wall. Along the way it displaces other objects, some of which appear to be moving very slightly on their own too. Take a look. The video uploader claims the video is 100% genuine, but it does always beg the question of why our camera is positioned in that way. However, in the description it states that this was taken over a 2-day period, and as we know from previous videos, if someone is experiencing paranormal activity in a specific area of their home, it's not unusual to set up a camera in that location. The video then starts to shake towards the end, but we're not sure if this is the uploader, who is behind the camera, or if this is also part of the supposed poltergeist activity. What do you make of this one? Could someone be pulling on the mug with a string, or is this a real poltergeist caught on camera? The ghostly scream. Our first image was taken by a tourist at the Castle Museum in York, United Kingdom. The camera seems to have captured the creepy apparition of a child's distorted face, staring out from the window of a carriage. The Kirk Gate, where the horse-drawn carriage was located, is part of a detailed recreation of a late Victorian street within the museum, and is known to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. The cobbled street has shops such as a saddler, gunsmiths, ironmongers, and drapers, which are all based on businesses that were trading in York between the years of 1870 to 1901. There is also a schoolroom and a police station, as well as an alleyway, which portrays the poverty of the era in the Kirkgate area. The creepy photo was taken by Zoe Callow, who runs Gwynedd Paranormal Investigations, and wasn't aware of anything odd happening at the time, or of anything unexplained occurring when she was visiting the museum. It was when she got home and was looking through the many shots she had taken during the day that one of her fellow paranormal team members noticed the bizarre anomaly, which made Zoe's blood run cold. The spectral face is horribly distorted and could be that of a woman or a child. Could it possibly be a case of pareidolia, the human tendency to spot a recognizable image when none exists? Or did Zoe actually capture the image of a trapped and tortured ghost, forever frozen in some sort of perpetual scream? The spectre in the carriage is not the first ghost to have been spotted within the Castle Museum walls. In 1953, the museum had a caretaker named Mr. Jonas, and he lived in the basement with his wife. The museum was located on the site of what was once York Castle, built by William the Conqueror in 1068. It later housed prison buildings, which were built in the 18th century. With its history of suffering, it is the perfect place for supernatural activity. One night, Mr. Jonas had locked up the museum with the help of his wife, and they returned to their accommodation. As they were settling down for the evening, they heard footsteps coming from the museum area above. Mr. Jonas went upstairs to investigate. He found a strangely dressed gentleman pacing the floor. Believing him to be a visitor who had mistakenly been locked in for the night, Mr. Jonas approached the man from behind and laid a hand on his shoulder to inquire what he was doing there. As he did this, the man immediately disappeared. On another occasion, Mr. Jonas was with a colleague when they both witnessed the male apparition after closing time, who they determined was dressed in Edwardian clothing. The well-dressed phantom has since been spotted occasionally, but no one knows who he is or what his connection is to the museum. Demon Goblin. Imagine being alone in your room and sitting happily at your computer screen, talking away to your friends through your webcam. Suddenly, some sort of strange creature appears in the open doorway. Your friends are shocked and tell you that something is behind you. The creature appears to be curiously looking around, but on entering the room and seeing you, it quickly crouches down quite low before skulking away. You are surprised and a little freaked out. It looks like some sort of alien or goblin-like creature. Known as small grotesque monsters, goblins have appeared in folklore all over Europe for hundreds of years, and can be compared to demons with their ability to shapeshift. Similar malevolent creatures appear in other cultures, such as the Muki of South America, that steal children, or Pukwudgie. Found in Delaware and parts of Indiana, it is said to lure people to their deaths by pushing them off a cliff. Maybe you think your friend is joking when he says that he can see something behind you, but with a racing heart and the hair standing up on the back of your neck, you turn around to get a better look out into the corridor. When you can't find anything out there, you come back and shout at your friend for creeping you out. But when you watch the footage back and see what they saw, you can't get the image out of your mind and find it hard to sleep at night, just in case the strange creature comes back to look for you. A family haunting. The Shapiro family haunting began with an Ouija board gathering hosted by Mary Shapiro, and we covered this in a previous video. It would seem that during the seance, an entity which called itself Fear entered the Shapiro family home and began to make its presence known. Very well known. In the first piece of footage, which is filmed in the dining kitchen of the house at night, we can hear a disembodied voice speaking out into the darkness. A voice can definitely be heard about halfway through the clip. It's been speculated that it is whispering, "I'm here," or "let me out." The second clip shows footage of what is noted as poltergeist case number 1811. During the introduction, it states that the video in question was taken in the Shapiro house while the family was asleep. Philip Shapiro was convinced that there was a poltergeist in the home and that both the house and his wife were possessed by something evil. All of the videos can be found on the YouTube page of Dr. Von Kostler. He claims to be a parapsychologist who helps his clients cope with the mental and spiritual fatigue that accompanies paranormal activity such as this. His page contains a collection of paranormal experiences that have been caught on CCTV from all around the world and include poltergeist activity, possessions, EVP, ghosts, and hauntings. Dr. Von Kostler suggests that the paranormal occurrences experienced by the Shapiros, which included disembodied voices, moving objects, doors closing, and the interference of electronics, should be documented as a way of dealing with the events. As well as the ball moving by itself, there appears to be some sort of dark shadow that passes in front of the camera. This is just a small piece of the hours of footage that was taken in the home. Take a look. It's the third video that is the most disturbing. It is an incredibly creepy audio clip of noises coming from the basement of the Shapiro house. Several overlapping voices are shouting and screaming, and they sound more demonic than ghostly. Take a listen. It seems that the figure of Dr. Von Kostler is as mysterious as the videos that he posts. He could have some sort of connection to Arthur Kostler, who wrote the book The Roots of Coincidence in 1972, as an introduction to theories such as parapsychology, ESP, and psychokinesis. He died by suicide in a pact with his wife in 1983, leaving his estate of around £1 million to the University of Edinburgh to set up the Kostler Parapsychology Unit. The group is only one of its kind in the UK and conducts research concerning various aspects of psychic phenomena. We're not sure if he's linked to this organisation, but he very well could be. Regardless, what do you make of the footage? The Clumber Demon. Clumber Park in Nottinghamshire belongs to the National Trust, a charity that looks after places of historic and natural beauty across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Clumber is one of the charity's most visited parks, notorious not only for its outstanding gorgeousness, but also for its ghosts and mysterious sightings. Hannah and Dave Rowett were walking their 2 Labrador dogs through Clumber Woods early one December morning, when Hannah got the feeling that they weren't alone and admitted that she often felt things that others didn't. Sensing something strange, Hannah shone her torch at the object and quickly took out her phone. She was shocked to see some sort of scary shape crawling across the path in front of her. Hannah quickly snapped a live photo of the creepy figure and told her husband that she thought she may have seen a ghost. Initially she thought the shadow creature was a dog, but realised that it was some sort of crawling humanoid-like figure with long limbs, which has been described as demon-like. Her husband Dave admitted that seeing the clip made every hair from his feet to his head stand on end. It also looks as though something is standing in front of one of the trees. Could the 2 shapes be connected? The demon ghost is not the only spirit known to haunt the beautiful spot. Clumber House once sat in the middle of the park, but was demolished in 1938 after it was devastated by 2 fires, the first in 1879 and the second in 1912. The impressive walled garden and 19th century chapel are all that is left, except for the phantom of the Grey Lady, who roams the area wearing a long grey cloak. She has often been seen on misty days, but when witnesses have tried to get closer to the ghostly lady, she vanishes into thin air. A reliable witness. The 23rd of April 2007 was a clear day and perfect flying conditions for the small commuter plane to travel from Southampton on the English mainland to Alderney, one of the British Channel Islands off the coast of France. Ray Boyer, who was 53, had been a senior pilot for 18 years and had flown that particular route thousands of times. There were 8 passengers on board, and visibility was so good that Captain Boyer could easily see his destination ahead about 40 miles away. At 3 p.m, the aircraft was travelling around 4,000 feet when Boyer saw a yellow line which appeared to be straight ahead. Following protocol, he immediately contacted Jersey Tower, which is the air traffic control centre responsible for the Channel Islands. Controller Paul Kelly was on duty and responsible for the 1,000 square mile area of airspace where Flight 544 was flying, but Kelly was unable to see anything on his radar ahead of the aircraft. Now Boyer could see that the object, which he described as a cigar-shaped brilliant light, was not moving and was at least as much as a mile wide, like a CD on its edge. In 2021, Boyer went on to describe the UFO as being huge, the size of 5 or 6 battleships, and very sharply defined. A very sharply defined, solid, bright yellow-gold object, with a couple of black bands on the side that were kind of shimmering. At traffic control, Kelly could now see something on his radar, a single primary contact that seemed to be in the vicinity that Ray was describing. 2 of the passengers on Captain Boyer's aircraft also saw some unusual lights that were sunlight coloured and like an elongated oval. Boyer was unsure about the safety of his flight and delayed the descent into Alderney Airport, but decided to start going down as the object was becoming more and more visible and he was becoming more and more concerned. Kelly could still intermittently see the object on his radar, so he contacted another aircraft that was in the vicinity to go and take a look. The pilot from airline Blue Islands, named Patrick Patterson, who was travelling over the island of Sarg, also saw the object behind him to his left, in the approximate position that Boyer had described. Captain Boyer said that the incident was pretty scary and he was shaken up, but went to the operations department and reported the incident as a near miss straight away on landing. It is one of the most thorough UFO reports ever filed. Pilots are generally accepted as reliable observers, and there have been many strange incidents reported by them since the 1940s. A similar encounter took place over the Bass Straits of Australia in 1978, which ended in tragedy. 20-year-old pilot Frederick Valentich was flying a Cessna light aircraft when he reported an unidentified aircraft following him at 4,500 feet. He said it had 4 bright landing lights, but he couldn't tell what type it was. Valentich radioed Melbourne flight service at 7:06 p.m. on the 25th of October and said the aircraft was orbiting him and might be deliberately toying with him. He also said the aircraft had a shiny metal surface and a green light on it. Valentich was told by control that there was no other known traffic in the skies at the time. After a few minutes, Valentich reported having engine trouble and was asked to identify the mysterious plane again. His chilling reply was, "It isn't an aircraft." Just before there was a metallic scraping sound and the transmission was cut off. Valentich was never seen again, and both incidents remain unexplained. We love it when viewers send us in unique stories, images and videos. And the following image is no exception. We were emailed by Chris, and we think that he might be onto something. He sent us in a very old photograph of a now demolished building in Hobart, Tasmania. Chris was looking through some archive photographs on the library's Tasmania website when he came across Roxburgh House. Built in 1820, the house was described at auction as a large, commodious 3-story stone building that, when finished, will be one of the delightful residences in or near Hobart Town. However, the years were not kind to the building, and after being converted into a hotel in 1834, known as the Golden Fleece, it soon fell into disrepair and earned the nickname the Rat's Castle, because homeless people made holes in the walls to gain entry and live there. Sadly, during that period, 2 babies died in the building. One sadly starved to death, and the other was laid on and killed by a drunk mother. In 1879, the Rat's Castle was demolished and the site sold to Scottish schoolmaster Alexander Ireland, and by 1880, the current Roxburgh House was built, with Scotch College conjoined to the rear. The college continued at the site until 1900, when it moved premises. Today, Roxburgh House has been converted into apartments. This image is of the house before it was demolished. It's clear that there is a man looking out of the top window on the right-hand side, and some bystanders by the front fence. But who is that ghostly-looking figure standing in the front doorway? Now, we have no more information on this building, so we cannot confirm whether or not it's haunted. This could just be a smudge on the photograph. But it's images like this that we know are 100% not fake that certainly make you question whether or not this old-school camera captured something strange. What do you think? The Demon of Brownsville Road. Since he was a small boy, Bobby Cramer felt strangely drawn to a house on Brownsville Road in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And as an adult with a young family, he was delighted when the old Victorian house came up for sale. Thinking it was the perfect home for his growing family, he put in a lowball offer and was surprised and delighted it was accepted without any negotiations. However, a strange thing happened when the family revisited the house to measure up. Bob's young son, Bobby Jr., wandered off and was later found crying and hyperventilating by a staircase, seemingly terrified by an unseen force. Bob later asked the seller if there was anything wrong with the house, but the seller assured him that the house was fine, and that Catholic Mass was conducted several times in the living room of the house, which in hindsight was an odd response. In 1988, Bob, his wife Lisa, and their 4 young children moved into 3406 Brownsville Road. Despite Lisa telling Bob the place gave her the creeps, and almost immediately the family realized they were not alone in the house, and were sharing it with one or more malevolent spirits. The first thing they noticed was the pull chain light in a coat closet continuously wrapped itself around the light and would never remain in the hanging position, no matter how often they repositioned it. This was followed by minor nuisances like lights turning on by themselves and doors opening and shutting. However, things got more sinister, especially for Bobby Jr., who refused to sleep in his bedroom, preferring to sleep in a closet with the light on. Also, a ghost began to make its presence felt, sometimes manifesting as a black foggy cloud and sometimes as a foul stench. The family heard footsteps and unexplained sounds and found bent crucifixes and destroyed rosaries scattered around the property. A few months later, Bob found a small metal box buried in the front yard. Inside were Catholic religious items. Disturbed by what he had found, Bob called the previous owners, who in no uncertain terms told him, "Just put it back where you found it." The following years were torturous for the family, and they became increasingly dysfunctional, with Lisa and 2 of the children suffering from significant mental health issues. Things came to a head in 2003 when Bob's eldest son attacked him and Bob was arrested, although no charges were brought. After the incidents, the paranormal activity in the house increased tenfold, and eventually Bob sought assistance from the Catholic Church. Several priests and 1 lay person began a lengthy battle to cleanse the house from the demonic spirit they believed lived there. It would be 2 years before the infestation was released. Kramer, who was a former Republic County Commissioner of Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, went on to write a book about his experiences that he called The Demons of Brownsville Road. The book was released in 2014 with great media acclaim, and Bob's reputation as a public official added credibility to the story. You can pick the book up in the description below. However, family members of the previous owners of the house, who Bob talked about in the book using pseudonyms, were less than impressed, claiming that the story was fabricated and disrespected the memory of their relatives. Today, Bob still owns the house and has opened it as a bed and breakfast. However, the years have not been kind to him. In March 2015, his son David died unexpectedly, and his wife went into a deep depression. And after 37 years, their marriage ended in 2018. We wonder if anyone has ever stayed at this house. And if so, what was it like? The Teke Teke. The Teke Teke is the terrifying tale of a Japanese girl who fell onto a railway line and was cut in 2, and whose vengeful spirit lurks in train stations and urban streets, preying on unsuspecting passers-by. Due to horrific injuries, Teke Teke has no lower body and travels along on her hands carrying a razor-sharp scythe. She is often portrayed as having long black hair and claws instead of fingernails that help her drag her mutilated body around. The young woman earned the nickname Teke Teke because that is the sound she makes as she moves along the concrete paths. She is widely believed to be the spirit of a woman named Kashima Raiko. According to legend, at the end of World War II, Kashima worked in an office, and as she walked home one evening, she was assaulted by military personnel who left her badly injured on the railway line. As she struggled to get to safety, she was hit by a train and cut in half. However, she was not instantly killed, and it was so cold that night that her blood vessels contracted and prevented her from bleeding to death. Instead, she writhed around in pain on the track until she was spotted by an attendant, but instead of trying to help her, he covered her in a plastic bag and left her to die a slow, agonizing death. It is said that if you encounter Kashima in a public bathroom, she will ask if you know where her legs are, and if the reply you give is not acceptable to her, she will take revenge and cut your legs off with her scythe. The only way to appease her spirit is to tell her that her legs are on the Machine Expressway, or say the phrase Kamen Shinemai. These answers will supposedly spare your life. Although if you encounter Teke Teke in the suburbs or in the train station, she will chase you and cut your body in half, mimicking her own horrific death and disfigurement. This is one to remember if you ever find yourself visiting the Japanese suburbs or subways. The Ghosts of Petite Trianon. In the summer of 1909, Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain travelled from England to Paris on a 3-week sightseeing trip. When they arrived, they looked around the palace and then decided to visit Petite Trianon, a small chateau that the newly crowned Louis XIV gave to his young queen, Marie Antoinette. But when they arrived, it was closed, so the pair continued walking and soon realised they were lost. As they looked around, Charlotte noticed a building and saw a woman in the window shaking a white cloth. At the time, Eleanor saw a deserted farmhouse with an old plough at the side. Neither woman said anything, but felt a strange oppression come over them. As they continued walking, they noticed 2 men in the distance with wheelbarrows and spades. Initially they thought the men were gardeners, but as they got closer, they realised they were dressed in long greyish-green coats, wearing tri-cornered hats, which was not usual gardener's attire. They asked the men the way and were told to continue straight ahead. Eleanor then noticed a cottage with a woman and girl standing in the doorway. Both had a white handkerchief tucked into their bodice. She later described the two as similar to a pair of wax figures rather than human beings. Soon the ladies found themselves in a small wooded area with a circular garden pavilion. A man was sitting there wearing a cloak and a large sun hat. The place was lifeless, flat and fake-looking, with no light, shade or shadows, and no wind in the trees. The man turned and looked at the two women. His face was repulsive and dark, with smallpox scars, and he stared at them with an expression of hate. They were then surprised by another man who approached them. He was tall and handsome with dark eyes, wearing a large hat that was hiding his dark curly hair. He directed them to proceed to the right, where they passed over a small bridge. Charlotte then saw a regal-looking woman sitting on a stool who appeared to be sketching. As the women got closer, the lady turned to look at them. Her face was pretty but older, and she was wearing a white hat with light-coloured hair and an old-fashioned long summer dress. Without speaking, Charlotte and Eleanor left the area. As they walked, Charlotte could see the lady again, but this time she was wearing a pale green shawl. Shortly after, both ladies left the area and headed back. The women didn't speak about what had happened until a week later, when they both wrote down separate versions of what they encountered and compared notes. They then decided to revisit the Trianon Gardens, but this time did not encounter any of the specific things they had seen previously. And strangely, the pavilion and bridge were gone. After doing some research, both ladies were convinced Trianon was haunted, and that the lady in the regal dress was the ghost of Marie Antoinette. Many years later in 1911, the ladies published the story of their strange trip under the pseudonyms Elizabeth Morrison and Frances Lamont. Critics judged that the tale was unlikely, and suggested that the two women had misinterpreted already known cases of paranormal activity in the area. However, parapsychologists had a different take on the story, and proposed that the women had experienced a time slip or some form of retrocognition. What is fascinating about this case is that both women maintained the authenticity of what they had seen until the day they died, and their true identities as the authors of the book were not made public until 1931. The curious case of Robert Johnson, the man who sold his soul to the devil. Robert Johnson from Hazelhurst, Mississippi, was an American blues musician and songwriter who, as a traveling performer, had little commercial success in his short lifetime. He only ever participated in 2 recording sessions in 1936. However, these landmark recordings displayed a talent and style that has influenced a generation of musicians, and he is now recognized as a master of the Delta blues, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame describes him as being the first ever rock star. His unique guitar style went on to influence rock guitarists like Peter Green, Eric Clapton, and Keith Richards. Robert died on August 16, 1938, near Greenwood, Mississippi, at the age of 27. His cause of death is unknown. No formal autopsy was ever performed, and his death certificate only listed the date and location of his demise. It is suspected he had congenital syphilis, and that may have contributed to his early death, although there are some that say he was poisoned by the jealous husband of a woman he was flirting with. Similar to his cause of death, where he is buried is also a mystery, with 3 different markers claiming to be his grave. The ongoing mystery about Robert's life and death have spawned various legends, the most prominent being that he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for musical genius. According to legend, Johnson dreamed of becoming a great blues musician, but he was absolutely useless at playing the guitar. However, one night, a powerful force instructed him to take his guitar to a crossroads, where he met with the devil, who took his guitar and tuned it. He then returned the instrument to Robert in exchange for his soul. Like everything about Robert, where the crossroads is located is disputed, but is widely believed to be at the intersection of Highway 61 and Highway 49 in Clarksdale, Coahoma County, Mississippi. Another suggested location is Rosedale, Mississippi. Johnson's song Crossroad Blues is supposedly about the day he met the devil. Haunted House. In 2022, a video was uploaded to the internet by a woman in Canada, which apparently shows a ghostly figure emerging from a creepy-looking doll that proceeds to chase her pet cat around her apartment. Kathy Gallinger, from Quint West in Ontario, claims that she cannot go to certain areas of her home and is terrified of an invisible resident that haunts her living space, after she installed CCTV equipment and captured some eerie activity. After moving into the home in August 2018, the mother of one says her 20-year-old daughter, Jaden, and husband have experienced numerous paranormal incidents, such as shadows appearing out of nowhere and following her around, as well as objects moving around the apartment by themselves. With no explanations as to the weird events, Kathy, who works as a call center operative during the day, decided to set up a camera to try and catch a glimpse of the entity. And capture it she did. Take a look. As you can see from the footage, Salem, the family cat, is seen observing a 1950s antique doll, which was given to Kathy by her mother. As the curious kitty approaches the doll, its prosthetic hand moves slightly, before a dark mist emerges from behind it. The 3-year-old feline is visibly shocked and runs as fast as it can from the dark mass in sheer terror. The ordeal took place in the basement of the property, where Kathy explains, "My TikTok followers asked me to put the camera in with the dolls overnight in the basement, as that's where most of the activity is, and that her daughter heard him outside and let him in, and he was clearly afraid of something. She said, 'Mum, you might want to check those cameras because the cat's crazy scared.'" The video has since racked up more than 600,000 views, but has also sparked skepticism and criticism for the camera's convenient positioning and the family's opportunity to gain online followers, likes and attention. After calling in her friend, a psychic medium, Kathy was reassured that the ghostly apparition was not hostile, despite the house having an incident in the 1980s, whereby a group of teenagers dabbled with a sinister Ouija board. She then decided to respond to the doubters by insisting that she, herself, is a skeptic of such things, but that the footage was 100% genuine. The 45-year-old states that "I love this house. The only way we'd consider moving was if it became violent, or if anything was to harm any of us." As of today, there has been no signs of hostility from the supposed poltergeist, and so the family remain at the residence and continue to post online with regard to anything supernatural. They seem to be getting used to the weird goings-on, and so are relatively comfortable in its presence. As for Salem, whose name is a fun coincidence, well, he is doing fine, as far as we know. Haunted Oxford Castle. This next video was uploaded in 2022 by a Reddit user named Stuart James Author under the R-Ghost subreddit. The title of the post begins, "Footage I recorded recently while carrying out a paranormal investigation at Oxford Castle." Oxford Castle and Prison was constructed by Norman Baron Robert O'Doyle after William the Conqueror invaded England and won the Battle of Hastings in the year 1066. In recent years, the site has become a visitor attraction for history buffs and ghost hunters alike. It is said, like many ancient structures, that Oxford Castle is home to various entities and spooky happenings within its walls, one of which the user believes to have caught on his camera. The castle's website itself discusses possible culprits that may be responsible for the scary events and visions, which help fund the preservation and upkeep of its edifice. Some believe that the ghost of Empress Matilda, daughter of Henry I, whose cousin locked her in the prison chambers to infiltrate and attain the throne for himself, died whilst attempting to escape. She is said to make an appearance now and again at the castle, seemingly wearing a white cloak and scaring the on-site guards on various occasions. Others believe that they have seen the headless ghost of King Charles I, who was found guilty of treason during the English Civil War and subsequently beheaded for his crimes. The king's presence is often felt within the academic area of the castle and has been spotted many times by tourists. Another ghostly figure, that of Colonel Francis Windbank, is also said to haunt a certain area of the castle, known as Dead Man's Walk. Windbank supported the Royalist cause during the English Civil War, but was eventually captured and court-martialed and shot in 1645 for failing to defend the Royalist base of Bletchington Park. Or could it be George Napier, the English Roman Catholic priest who was hung, drawn and quartered at the site on the 9th of November 1610 after being found guilty of treason? In the aftermath of his gruesome death, his body parts were displayed across the city gates, but his spirit is said to roam the grounds of the castle, seemingly in search of his beloved niece, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The video in question itself only lasts for 30 seconds, and is of the Reddit user himself investigating the internal rooms of the castle. They seemingly capture the face of someone or something at the window, and a shadow appears to sweep across the path of the camera before they decide it's time to leave, or in their words, run for the hills, after they re-examined the footage. Users of the popular site have commented on the post, giving their opinions on the paranormal video. Some question the quality of the video, whilst others are simply entertained by some scary found footage. What do you make of it? Ghost caught on camera. This next video is a little hard to make out at first, so you may have to strain your eyes a little or go closer to your monitor to see it at best. We promise there's no jump scares. Another post under the subreddit Our Ghosts was uploaded at the start of 2023 by a user named Failed Talk Show Host. The title is rather vague and is part of an ongoing series of posts whereby the person is reporting on their camera's ability to function and capture what seems to be a ghostly figure in the background using night vision mode. The title reads, Continuation, Left Running Overnight, Attempt at Night Mode Video. Upon initial viewing, one can barely make out the position of the camera itself and what it is actually recording. In this case, it seems to be pointing towards a door that is slightly ajar within a darkened room of a house or apartment. A green-coloured light is visible just off-centre within the shot. This is most likely a display clock or monitor of some kind. Naturally, the room is very dark, especially if the user wanted to capture something using its dark mode function. What they caught has certainly spooked users of the site and got people talking. Again, it's hard to see upon first viewing and is best observed through the assistance of fellow user WXMike94, who decided to take it upon himself to enhance the picture quality and that of a ghoulish entity that appears in the background. The user, whose real name is Mike from New Jersey, posted the following message in response to the original video. I just edited the video to adjust contrast, and I'm not going to bed tonight. Many were quick to click on the link and have a look. In the end, we're not disappointed. One can better see an orb-looking object or head as it floats into view, swaying from right to left in an unusual manner, before rapidly vanishing out of sight towards the right-hand side of the screen. Could this simply be a speck of dust, a drop of water, or perhaps a spirit that has accidentally walked into frame? Whatever it is, users have taken to the comments section to discuss and debate it, with many wishing they hadn't looked at the video, especially before bed. Perhaps Failed Talk Show Host may have something to talk about after all. What do you make of this one? Ghost Adventures. It's a common occurrence when investigating, provoking, or merely being in the presence of the paranormal, that dangerous events or incidents can take place. In the case of this next video, one would certainly agree that having a brick launched at your head is something that many would not wish to encounter, especially when you are on the lookout for ghosts. Unfortunately for Zach Bagans, a paranormal investigator and television personality, this was the case, after he and his colleagues spent a night in one of the most haunted buildings in the United States. The Goldfield Hotel was considered to be one of the grandest, expensive hotels in the popular state of Nevada after its construction in 1908. However, after many attempts at refurbishment and renovation in the years following World War II, the lodging was left abandoned. Nowadays, it is a famous tourist attraction for ghost hunters and historians, and is said to house the spirit of the supposed mistress of politician and economic powerhouse George Wingfield. The woman, named only as Elizabeth, seemingly became pregnant with Wingfield's child, and due to fear of being exposed, the so-called King of Nevada chained her to a radiator in room 109 throughout the entire duration of her pregnancy. After the baby was born, Elizabeth seemingly disappeared without a trace, with many believing that Wingfield killed her or paid her to stay away from him, whilst others believe that she died during childbirth and the baby was thrown down a mine shaft underneath the hotel grounds. Visitors claim to see the ghost of Elizabeth and hear her cries for her lost child. Another entity known as the Stabber is also said to haunt the hotel and attack those who dare enter the building with sharp objects that appear randomly from nowhere. Due to the violent nature of these attacks and paranormal experiences suffered by the apparent victims, people are warned to stay away from the site. However, this didn't stop the Ghost Adventures crew from attempting to make contact. Whilst filming the 12th installment of the 4th season, the aptly named Flying Brick episode broadcast one of the most talked about scenes in the show's history after it aired on the 30th of September 2011. Zach was accompanied by Nick Groff and Aaron Goodwin as they attempted to communicate with spirits during a planned overnight stay at the abandoned hotel. The trio wandered around the complex before heading into the basement, when out of nowhere, a brick is thrown towards Bagans, striking him on the torso. A moment of chaos ensues as the team are startled and take off running, not to mention shocked and terrified at what the supposed ghost was capable of. After reviewing the footage at length, and with additional support from video technicians, the team were also able to decipher a moving figure near one of the hotel windows, as well as the direction from where the brick was launched. Considering the history and numerous testimonies from those who have stayed or entered the hotel, this could be a genuine piece of paranormal activity caught on tape. Could it be Elizabeth? Could it be the Stabber? Or could it just be choreographed entertainment? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Poltergeist. The thought of living with a ghost would likely scare the majority of us to our very core. For others, the belief in the supernatural and connection to the afterlife is something that brings a tremendous sense of comfort and peace, especially if you know for sure that the spirit is that of a deceased loved one. Then there is the third kind of people, those who live in a haunted house, not knowing what exactly they are dealing with and why, yet seem to get on with their lives and accept that a poltergeist has decided to take up residence in their home. Popular YouTube and TikTok personalities Laney Clark and Ben Hubbard are regular content creators whose channel, Laney and Ben, has gained a lot of traction over the last year or so. The couple, who are both teachers from Buckinghamshire, claim as of 2018 to share their home with not one but two spirits named Dave and Andy. As you can see from clips in this segment, there are various incidents involving what many would consider to be paranormal activity in their household. A video posted on the 16th of July 2022, titled "The Most Aggressive Poltergeist Activity Yet," is well worth a watch to understand what the couple are going through on a day-to-day basis. Take a look at this.
This Christmas, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Oh my god, another one!
Please tell me to call that one.
This just goes to show how unprofessional you truly are.
It took my breath away.
Take
And
my
then I
breath
said it
away.
before I thought. Isn't that weird? Like when you start to laugh and that sort of energy.
You're just going to play that off like, ha ha ha, the other side isn't that funny?
No, like I'm sitting.
Me.
Doors appear to open and close on their own, often slamming and scaring the young couple as they go about their daily lives. Lights begin to flicker, and at one point their Christmas tree shakes and moves around whilst they watch television in their living room. As the couple have come to terms with their guests, they have decided to document and post videos on their chosen platforms, in the hope that they can understand the reason for such activity. Eerily, on the 28th of February 2022, after the ghost hunting duo welcomed their son Apollo into the world, Lainey claims that she died for 3 minutes on the operating table during a troubled C-section. Lainey states that my lungs stopped working, I couldn't use my voice or move my eyes. I had no way of telling the doctors that I was suffocating. The last thing I heard was them saying my heart had stopped. It was during this point of having one foot in the afterlife that she noticed a young, fresh-faced man with 80s-style floppy hair, tall and around 20 years old, whom she calls Dave. This entity is the most active spirit in the house and is responsible for the majority of the spooky goings-on in the home, including rolling the couple's gym ball across the floor and moving their coffee cups around. Andy, the late brother of the couple's psychic medium friend Sam, is not as active, but is said to visit them from time to time, especially now that baby Apollo has appeared on the scene. It is said that babies have a deeper connection and awareness of spirits, so perhaps the little one has already made some friends. What do you think?